University, and the most important university.
To the core mission of the University National Strategic Development Plan. Mission of the importance of research as a foundation. Burapha University has distinguished itself in academic, technological and professional education. International College, College of Research Methodology and Cognitive Science. 3 Institute of Marine Science. Burapha University, the Health Science Center, the Chinese Studies Center.
So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to bring you to the opening ceremony of this event. And this time, I would like to invite Professor Seri Chatchan, the Vice President for Academic Affairs of Burapha University, to deliver the welcome address on behalf of the organizing committee. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Seri Chatchan.
Honorary Chair and Consultant to the President of Burapha University, Professor Dr. Suchat Patham, as the General Chair of the Organizing Committee of the Burapha University International Conference 2013, I would like to report to you the development and progress of the event as following. This conference has been joint organized by Burapha University and University under Higher Education Development Eastern Network as the gathering of the representatives from colleges and university, industry, and various professional organizations to disseminate update research of regional and international issues. This conference also helps educate students and staff of Burapha University and universities under the network, as well as interested individuals to interact intellectual and to share their respective experiences and expertise, as well as to exchange thoughts and ideas on innovative discoveries. There are approximately 300 participants from 37 Thai universities and 20 universities from 13 countries which are Australia, Cambodia, Canada, India, Indonesia, Italy, Japan, Malaysia, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Taiwan, USA, and Vietnam. Altogether, 232 research papers will be presented, 120 orally and 112 in posters. The oral presentation will be divided into 3 categories. Health Science, 43 papers. Humanity and Social Science, 86 papers. Science and Technology, 103 papers. The duration of the conference is 2 days, starting from July the 4th to July the 5th. It is now the time the conference should get started. May I therefore invite Honorary Chair and Consultant to the President of Burapha University, Professor Dr. Suchat Patham, to officially open the conference. May you please, Professor Suchat Patham. Thank you very much.
Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I feel very honored indeed to be invited to preside over the opening ceremony of Burapha University International Conference 2013 on global change, human and social impacts which is held once again here in the beautiful city of Papua. This conference, of course, reflects the leading roles of Burapha University in fostering and strengthening the development of higher education in the eastern region of Thailand, where the university is situated. As reported by the chair of the organizing committee, this conference gathers around 300 scholars from Thailand and 13 other countries around the world to present more than 200 research papers, which is quite amazing. The main purpose of this conference, as I perceive, is to provide forum for the exchange of knowledge and innovations resulting from research in different disciplines, comprising humanities, social sciences, health sciences, science and technology. It also aims to include relevant issues such as liberalization of trade and investment frameworks, mobility and competency of the people in order to get ready for the rapid changes expected upon the transformation of ASEAN to ASEAN community, which will be in effect a few years from now. As this conference can serve as a platform for capacity building for researchers and participants, I would like to encourage the participants, either in persons or in groups of delegation, to do their best in maximizing the benefits of these through partnership and make possible the sustainability and technical self-reliance stem from the research works. The ability to work and cooperate well in the international arena such as this is certainly a value added to our future works as well as graduates who need to be productive and competitive in the global market. I do anticipate that the deliberation of this conference would well respond to these challenges in terms of capacity building of university faculties and the strengthening of teaching and conducting research in all relevant disciplines to enhance strong academic, complementing the initiative for regional and global arena. I also have a high hope that the closer academic links developed during this conference will lead to further collaboration and mutual recognition of qualification works amongst participating members in the long run. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Burapha University, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to you all and the organizing committee of this Burapha University International Conference 2013 for all the contributions and deliberations, and looking forward to sharing with all of you the successful deliveries in this conference. And now, this is the proper time for the conference to get started. I henceforth declare the conference open. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Good morning. That's better. Professor Suchat, conference chairs, fellow participants of this conference, ladies and gentlemen, it's indeed a great honor for me to be invited to speak to this conference and to speak to you this morning. Now, I want to say that I was here about 2 weeks ago, and I just returned back this morning. Many of you who have traveled to the northeastern part of the United States understand how long it takes to get there. For me, from North Carolina, from my home where I live in Boone, it took me 36 hours to get here. So I arrived at this hotel this morning around 12:30. And so now I'm up and ready to go. So I want to say, if you feel that I'm incoherent, so understand that part of that is due to exhaustion and long travels. But when I was asked to come to this conference last year, I'd already planned my visit 2 weeks ago. But I said, I'm going to come back. Even though I knew there's going to be a price to pay on my body and the exhaustion, I love this country. And I love the relationship that we have developed between my university and Burapha University. So I'm happy to be here. I'm very excited about this conference, and I hope you are too. The conference organizers asked me to speak to this conference theme, which is global change, social and human impacts. I want to explore the dynamics between social and human impacts on what I consider to be 4 interrelated drivers of global change. 1, population growth. 2, human migration. 3, rapid urbanization. And 4, climate change. So I'm going to explore these four elements. And I know there are many others that I could have decided to explore, but I decided to choose on these 4 as it relates to this conference. And lastly, I will spend a few minutes talking about what needs to be done to assure ourselves and the generations to come a better future. Many of us agree that today our world is more interdependent and interconnected than ever before. Interdependence is now a fact that has become part of our lives, regardless of where we live. Every challenge we face today, from climate change and crime to technology and markets and communications and public health, is global in character. While the problems and the challenges we face are global and beyond all borders, the responses are national and sovereign and hemmed in borders. So this morning, the theme of global interdependence and global interconnectedness will be recurring in my remarks and interwoven as I go from here. Let us start with the population dynamics and global change. Over the next 10 years, the world population is expected to rise from the current 6.83 billion to approximately 7.7 billion people around the world. Most of these people are going to be living in urban areas. And especially it's going to be in 3 different parts of the world: China, India, and Africa as a continent. Even though the overall population growth rate have slowed down in most of the world over the past several years, the overall size of the population has continued to increase. By 2050, many experts estimate that population size is going to grow to above 10 billion people. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people. Al Gore, the former Vice President of the United States and an environmental activist, helps us to put this into perspective. And he says, I quote, "It took us 100,000 years for our species to reach the billion mark. Yet we have added that many people in just the first 13 years of this century. So we have been growing very rapidly in the last 13 years. There is indeed a more fundamental understanding of the linkages between population growth, population dynamics, and global environmental change. Population growth, composition, distribution have important interrelationships with the land use, land cover, and global climate change. They also affect demand for other kind of natural resources, because for any given combination of technology, energy use pattern of natural and social organization, population can have important multiplying effects in relationship to global change. Moreover, the need for policy responses to global change varies with the size, composition, distribution of population, and policy responses is also affected by the population that will feel the impact of global change. There are three fundamental processes determining population growth and distribution, namely fertility, mortality, and migration. All three processes are likely to affect and be affected by global change. In the short term, 5 to 15 years, migration both within and across national boundaries is likely to be highly dynamic and correlated with global change. Shifts in population age structure may also impact effects on resource demands. In considering population processes, it is imperative not to assume that causality flows in just one direction. Although some scholars have treated population as an independent variable in terms of its relationship to global change, environmental factors also influence population processes. For example, environmental quality, including climate, is one of the prime factors influencing migration destination choices. Declining environmental quality and increasing productivity of land have forced people to move. Drastic environmental or climate change may also lead to increased mortality. Thus, it is important to conduct empirical research and on both the effects of population dynamics on global change and of global change on population dynamics. In addition, it is important to recognize the relationship between population and global change that can operate through or mediated by other driving forces, such as economic or policy change. Now let me turn to human migration challenge, which is another driver of global change. People have always moved from one place to the other in search of better opportunity. But climate change is expected to trigger larger and more complex waves of human migration. The disruption of ecosystem-dependent livelihood will likely remain a leading driver of long-term migration over the next 2 decades or 3. And climate change is likely to exacerbate this situation. According to the International Organization of Migration, estimates by 2050, climate migrants, this might be a new term for you, but climate migrants will range from 200 million to 1 billion people. According to the United Nations Population Fund, in 2010, some 214 million people, or 3% of the world population, live outside their countries of origin. About half of all migrants. In some countries, this number is between 7 to 80%. Most of these are women, most of them of reproductive age. In fact, this is a very recent phenomenon in migration patterns in the last half century. Internal migration within countries is also on the rise as people move in response to inequitable distribution of resources, services, and opportunities, or to escape violent natural disaster or the increasing number of extreme weather events. The movement of people from rural to urban areas has also contributed to the explosive growth of cities around the globe as a result of what we call the push and pull factors. I shall return later on the issue of rapid urbanization, but the pull and push factors explain the fact that in rural areas, people find that life becomes a little bit difficult and opportunities become less and less, and so they move to urban areas. The pull factor explains the fact that in urban areas, people think that, it might be a myth, but people think that there are more better opportunities there, there are better services there. In most cases, there are also electricity and urban infrastructure that people are drawn to. And so these two factors contribute to people migrating from rural areas to urban areas. Migration, climate change, and the environment are interrelated. Just as environmental degradation and disaster can cause migration, movement of people can also entail significant effects on surrounding ecosystems. Let me give a personal experience of this. So I'm originally from Tanzania, although even now I live in the United States. Tanzania is in East Africa. And I happen to live in northwestern part of the country, which was a recipient of very large migrations of people from Burundi and Rwanda. The people came in this area that was heavily forested within a very short period of time. We experienced deforestation in an unimaginable scale because people cut down trees. First they want to build some dwellings, but also they cut trees because they want to use these trees for fuel, to cook, and other uses. So within a very short period of time, this place that was heavily forested became deforested, and now it's an environmental disaster in that area. Migration often seems to be perceived as a failure to adapt to a changing environment. Instead, migration can also be an adaptation strategy to climate and environmental change and is an essential component of the socio-environmental interaction that needs to be managed. Migration can be a coping mechanism and survival strategy for those people who move. At the same time, migration and mass migration in particular can also have significant environmental repercussions for areas of origin, areas of destination, and migratory routes in between and contribute to further environmental degradation. Let us turn now to the challenge of rapid urbanization. The world is undergoing the largest wave of urban growth in history. In 2008, for the first time in history, more than half of the world population lived in towns and cities. Let me repeat. In 2008, about half of the world population lived in towns and cities. Today, in 2013, this number will swollen to almost 5 billion people. That's today, with most of that growth concentrated in Africa and Asia, in this region. While megacities have captured much of public attention, much of the new growth will occur in small towns and cities which have fewer resources to respond to the magnitude of the change. 40 years ago, only 2 cities in the world had a population of about 10 million people. That's 40 years ago. Today, 23 cities around the world have that many population. So 40 years ago, only 2 cities, and today, 23 cities around the world have a population of more than 10 billion people. And by the way, Tokyo is leading the way. I just passed through Tokyo last night. Tokyo has 37 billion people. 37 million people. So the urban growth is increasing very rapidly. It is estimated that by 2025, 37 such big cities are going to exist around the world. And most of this growth is actually going to take place in this region. So the rapid growth is going to take place in Dhaka, in Bangladesh, Shenzhen in China, Karachi in Pakistan, and New Delhi in India. This incredibly rapid growth of megacities poses several economic, ecological, and social challenges. It is increasingly difficult to manage this growth in a sustainable way. It is recognized that over 70% of the growth currently takes place outside formal planning processes, and that 30% of urban population in developing countries are living in slums or what we call informal settlements. That's where vacant state-owned or private land is illegally occupied and is used for illegal slums and housing. As I travel around the world, I see this phenomenon in India, in Kenya, in South Africa, in Mexico, in Brazil, and in many other cities. You see a lot of slums as you travel in those places, and I'm sure you can add your own list to mine. In sub-Saharan Africa, for example, 90% of the new urban settlements are taking the form of slums or informal settlements. These are people in these informal settlements, and these settlements themselves are especially vulnerable to climate change impacts, as they are usually built on hazardous sites in high-risk locations. But this is not a phenomenon only in developing countries, but also in developed countries. And planned or informal urban development is a major challenge and a major issue. Rapid urbanization is also contributing significantly to climate change. The 20 largest cities consume 80% of the world's energy and urban areas generate 80% of greenhouse gases emissions around the world. Urban population growth, the quality of global and ecosystems, and urban environment will play an increasingly important role in public health with respect to issues ranging from soil waste and wastewater disposal, provision of housing, safe fresh water and sanitation, injury prevention, and other essential needs to the interface between urban poverty, environment, and health. These challenges posed by the current and future hyper-urbanization that municipal government face must be addressed quickly and immediately. Scholars, practitioners, and activists all agree that cities are where climate change measures will either succeed or fail. There is a unanimous agreement on this point. The fourth driver is climate change, to which I will now turn. Climate change is the most important driver of global change and the world's greatest threat. Climate change is not a science fiction, my friends. It is not a future threat. It is here, and it is here now. It is a challenge that must be addressed immediately. The scientific community now widely agrees on the fact that human activities are disturbing the fragile climatic equilibrium of our planet. Accelerated climate change is anticipated to have wide-ranging effects on the future sustainability of Earth due to adverse ecological, social, and economic impacts. The driving force is an increase in Earth's temperature as a result of human activities. Most scientists agree that the Earth's average temperature has warmed up to 0.76 degrees Celsius over the last 100 years, with most of this warming occurring in the last 20 years. Now, some of us may think that this 0.76 warming of the temperature is small. What does this mean? I want to put it in a way that we can understand. It means more hot days. We have experienced hot days. It means more severe storms. It means floods in many places around the globe, droughts and fires, and higher sea levels. This small temperature rise could threaten human health, lives, industries, and even jobs. Global warming also threatens agricultural production, freshwater supplies, and other survival of native species and ecosystems. As a result of this small temperature rise, we can also expect more hurricanes and cyclones in the Caribbean, the United States, and Burma, more extensive droughts in Eastern Africa, Australia, Southern Europe, and parts of China and India, and more devastating floods like those that we have experienced around the world in the recent past. Now, there are some skeptics who argue that record cold weather in various regions of the world disapprove the global warming argument. And that many of you may have heard or have heard, and I have heard some of these arguments. It is true that different parts of the world we have experienced various weather events that at first thought, one would think that this calls into question the global warming argument. I know, for example, in the US, in some parts of the US, especially in the Midwest, they have experienced extreme cold weather. A lot of snow. And then people say, where's global warming? Well, I think the confusion here occurs because people are not able to make a distinction between global warming and weather patterns. Okay? Weather patterns describe short-term events, while climate change is a long-term process that affects weather. So weather, a warming planet is actually consistent with increasing cold, increasing rains, and extreme weather. An overall warmer planet changes weather patterns everywhere at all times. Let me give an example here. Just a few days ago, I was talking with my relatives in the central part of the United States, what we call Midwest. So most of the people there are farmers. Normally they plant their crops in April. But last week, as I was talking to my relatives, 50% of the people have not planted their crops because it has been raining than usual because they can't get their equipment into the fields to plant. So the weather pattern there has changed. Where I live in North Carolina, we were so happy last December. We get our winter. Our coldest part of the year is December and January. So in December it was very warm. It looked like spring. We were all so very happy that we had managed to survive a warm winter. So December, no snow, no cold weather. We are so happy. But at the same time, we live in the place where we have ski resorts. The people in the we all own the ski resort, were not very happy, of course, because they couldn't do business. Some of us who love warm weather were so happy that winter was coming very late. In January, there was no cold weather. But came February, we started having our winter. Our winter came in February. It used to come in December. And we couldn't experience spring. So we moved from winter that started in February to summer. Now the temperature is very warm. In some parts of the United States, some of you may have heard, especially in California and Arizona, they're experiencing extreme heat, weathers that have never been experienced before. So this is what it means. Just last week, some of you are coming from India. How many of you are coming from India? Some of you, okay. In northern India last week, they experienced extreme rainfalls that caused a lot of mudslides and a lot of people died. They are still trying to calculate how many people died there. And what happened in India is that this time of the year, people go to northern part of India as pilgrims. And they had gone there expecting that the weather is going to be good. The weather all of a sudden changed, and a lot of people died. So that's what it means when the temperature rises. A small rise causes a lot of problems around the world. I want to briefly examine the impact of climate change on human health. Climate change poses serious risks on human health. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, global warming is expected to increase the risk of illness and death due to poor air quality, increased urban heat waves, diseases, and extreme weather-related events. In order to drive this point home, I want to highlight some of the fatal consequences of extreme weather events that have occurred in the recent past. Of course, I've already talked about what happened in India last week. There are still, the estimates that I've seen, they say there could be maybe 1,000 people who have died. The extreme numbers say it could be about 10,000 people who have died as a result of what happened last week. In May this year, the India's Department of Disaster Management reported that about 524 people died of heat stroke over the period of 1 month between April 1 and May 29th of this year. A severe and prolonged drought in Somalia, Djibouti, Ethiopia, and Kenya triggered a food crisis in July 2011, resulting in starvation that killed at least 30,000 children under the age of 5 and causing widespread malnourishment. This was by far the deadliest natural disaster and the worst drought to affect East Africa in more than 6 decades. Tropical storm Washi, which struck the Philippines in December 2011, was the world's deadliest in 2011, resulting in 1,268 deaths. In Japan, many of us still remember the earthquake and the resulting tsunami that happened that killed about 15,000 people there. In January of 2011, quick hitting and torrential rains killed about 903 people in flash flood and mudslide in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. The high death toll made it the deadliest weather event in Brazil's history. From late July and second week of August in 2010, heat in Russia and Eastern Europe was responsible for estimated death toll of 55,000 people in Russia alone. According to the Earth Policy Institute based in Washington, D.C., about 46,000 people died as a result of the record heat that scorched Europe in August of 2003. The impact of global warming are concerning enough when we consider them individually. So when you look at these events individually, as I've explained to you, it's already bad. A lot of people die. But when you view them collectively, things really get worse. You start understanding that we are really messed up. And this mess is causing a lot of deaths around the world. Our population will be affected by climate change for sure, but some are more vulnerable than others. People living in small island developing countries, other coastal regions, megacities and mountains, and polar regions are particularly vulnerable. Children, in particular children living in developing countries, are among the most vulnerable to the resulting health risks and will be exposed longer to health consequences of climate change. The health effects are also expected to be more severe for the elderly people and people with infirmities or pre-existing health conditions. Areas with weak health infrastructure, mostly in developing countries, will be least able to cope with climate change effects without assistance to prepare and to respond. Let us also examine quickly the economic impact of climate change. The costs of global warming are tremendous. Estimates vary, but most figures are in the trillions of US dollars. Scientists and economists are beginning to grapple with the serious economic and environmental consequences of failing to reduce the global carbon emission quickly and deeply. Many agree that the most expensive thing we can do is to do nothing. There's a unanimous agreement there that doing nothing is going to be the costliest thing that we can do. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the economic impacts of climate change will vary regionally, but aggregated and discounted to the present day are very likely to impose net annual cost, which will increase over time as global temperatures rise. In fact, it is very likely that all regions of the world will experience either declines in benefits or increase in net costs for increases in temperatures greater than 2 to 3 degrees Celsius. By 2030, researchers estimate that the cost of climate change and air pollution combined will rise to 3.2% of global GDP, with the world's largest, least developed countries forecast to bear the brunt, suffering losses of up to 11% of their GDP. The impact of global change are already evident in regions around the world. Let me give 2 examples here to drive this point home. According to the U.S. National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, or what we call NOAA in the U.S., the losses of 11 most expensive extreme weather climate disasters in the U.S. in 2012, last year, at a price tag of $110 billion US dollars. $110 US billion last year. Now, many of you remember last year we also were hit in the eastern part of the United States, in New York and New Jersey, what was called Hurricane Sandy. Hurricane Sandy was the deadliest and most expensive event in 2012 in the United States. According to NOAA, it cost about $65 billion US dollars and caused 159 fatalities. This was very, very expensive. In most recent, we have also experienced tornadoes in the Midwest. And these have caused a lot of fatalities. And even some cities and neighborhoods have been completely eliminated. Devastating effects. The 2011 disaster here in Thailand were the worst floods to affect the country in over half a century, and it became Thailand's most expensive natural disaster in history. I remember I was looking in the news, and many of you are from Thailand, remember people, especially in Bangkok. I know people in Bangkok, many of them fled to some of these places, and I know some of them fled to places like Bang Seng. And there were a lot of fatalities there. And from what I understood, many people died in Bangkok, died because of execution from electricity. All the wires that were in the water and people got executed from the wired. The World Bank estimates that that flood claimed about 657 people and caused about $45 billion in damages. So climate change are shown to hit the developing world, the poor, the hardest, partly because they are most likely to be dependent on the very resources impacted, but because they also have far less capacity to protect themselves. Despite this, climate change presents opportunities to achieve a more climate resilient development future. On the other hand, policies and measures needed to address these impacts and to reduce the amount of emissions will profoundly affect in different directions the lives of people all around the world. Now, unfortunately, the U.S. has not been very helpful in working with other nations to ratify global conventions and protocols. And I'm sure there are many of you here who will question me about the U.S. contribution. So let me address this issue. Although the statistics are generally familiar, it is worth recalling the absolutely central role of the U.S. in the climate change challenge. By any measure, the U.S. is inescapably a major contributor to the problem. Let me say why. Total U.S. emissions are higher than those of any country in the world, more than the emissions of the second, third, and fourth highest emitters combined. The United States emissions per person are among the highest in the world, more than double those of, for example, Japan, Russia, and nine times those of China. The U.S. economy is similarly relatively emissions intensive among developed nations, with emissions per unit of GDP higher than those of almost all old European Union countries and those of Japan. These statistics largely result from high levels of energy consumptions and large share of fossil fuels in energy mix, reflecting fundamental features of the U.S. economy and society, notably the abundance of cheap fossil fuel reserves, including coal, vast geographic distances enhancing the needs for transportation, and an expansive mode of development based on personal mobility through motor vehicles. In the U.S., we like to drive vehicles. It's so funny because you find that public transportation in the U.S. is least developed when you compare to other countries like Europe, for example. We like to drive. Everyone wants to sit in their cars and drive wherever they are going. And the challenges are highly interdependent. A more holistic approach is needed to address them. Transformative change is indeed necessary. So we must do something. So on population growth, there is no silver bullet that will address the growth of the population around the world. As I've said, the population is exploding and it's going to continue increasing. However, there are 4 factors that if addressed together, if these 4 factors are addressed together, we have a chance of slowing down the population growth. And Al Gore, in fact, in his new book, has summarized these factors as follows. First, education of girls. Second, is the empowerment of women in society to the point where their opinions are heard and respected, and they have ability to participate in decision making at different levels. Third, is the availability of fertility management, knowledge and technology so that women can effectively choose how many children they wish to have and the spacing of those children. And fourth is low infant mortality rates. Addressing these four factors will go a long way toward reducing the population growth. On climate migration, the Intergovernmental Organization of Migration has done some good work in this area to better understand and anticipate increased migratory flows through a combination of extensive policy research, multidimensional vulnerability assessment, and focused programmatic activities. IOM programs around the world have demonstrated the effectiveness of disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation activities for reducing risk exposures and vulnerability, and for providing management of migration, particularly in times of crisis. IOM responses is based on three-pronged approaches. One, minimize forced migration such as much as possible. And two, where forced migration does occur, ensure assistance and protection of the people affected while looking for durable solutions. And third, facilitate the role of migration as an adaptation strategy to climate change. On urbanization, that I discussed earlier, new ways of thinking about how to make cities more self-sustainable, along with advances in a wide range of technologies and heightened environmental awareness, are leading to a reformulation of urban planning and urban development. There are three approaches that are being practiced around the world to manage this issue. One is what is called Sustainable Cities Initiatives, Smart Cities Approaches, and Hub Model Approaches. Let me briefly, quickly explain to you what these are. Several cities around the world are implementing Sustainable Cities Initiatives, and these initiatives seem to be producing desirable results. A sustainable city offers a good quality of life to current residents, but does not reduce the opportunities for future residencies to enjoy. A sustainable city will grow at a sustainable rate and use resources in a sustainable way. Another approach being used worldwide is what is called smart cities. According to Boyd Cohen, a climate strategist helping to lead communities, cities, and companies on the journey toward the low-carbon economy, smart cities uses information and communication technology to more intelligent and efficient in the use of resources, resulting in the cost and energy saving, improved service delivery and quality of life, and the reduced environmental footprint, all supporting innovation and low carbon economy. And then the third approach is what I call the multi-hub model, which is used in other countries. Resolving the rapid urbanization problem also requires mitigating the rural-urban migration as a result of the push and pull factors that I discussed earlier. The approach can be achieved by identifying resource-rich regions of the country and developing them into multiple centers or hubs of economic activity outside megacities in order to develop a more equitable distribution of income and opportunities. So rural areas may then be clustered around these economic hubs to benefit from the latter's high demand for raw materials. Lastly, let me offer some suggestions for combating global warming. Global warming is one of the most urgent problems of our times. No single country can hope to address this problem alone on its own. In our highly interdependent world, nations big and small, developed and developing, will need to work closely together to tackle this problem and this challenge. The good news is that many of the solutions to this extraordinary challenge are within our reach. Many of the solutions to global warming are not only feasible, they are economically and socially beneficial. We need to master the political will to implement them. I think we are lacking political will around the world. In the US, we know this for sure. While there is no panacea for addressing a global warming, there is a wide variety of solutions that, taken together, will lead to a reduction in carbon dioxide emissions, the key to stopping global warming. One of the most important things we can do to stem global warming is to adopt forward-looking and forward-thinking policies that favor renewable energy sources and technologies such as wind, solar, geothermal, and biomass over fossil fuels such as coal. We also need to bring down energy consumption by conserving energy and promoting energy efficient practices. At the same time, we have to insist that fossil fuel plants clean up the act, as even under the best of circumstances, fossil fuels will continue to provide a share of our energy for many years to come. It's for this reason I'm very pleased that President Barack Obama just last week, he unveiled a new strategy to address this issue. His strategy focuses on 3 pillars: reducing the amount of carbon pollution in the US, leading the global effort to fight climate change, and 3, preparing US communities to endure extreme weather expected to become more frequent in a warming world. Using his executive power, the President will enact a range of regulations under these 3 pillars. The Obama administration has enacted new efficient standards for federal buildings and appliances in an effort to reduce carbon pollution by at least 3 billion metric tons cumulatively by 2030. These promising solutions must be phased in as we phase out outdated reliance on oil and coal. These cost-effective solutions will not only reduce heat-trapping emissions that cause global warming, but will also cut other types of pollutions that threaten health. There are also actions that we indeed can take at an individual level. And here I want to quote from Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth movie. Al Gore says, and I quote, each of us is a cause of global warming. But each of us can make choices to change that with the things we buy, the electricity we use, the cars we drive. We can make choices. We can make choices to bring our individual carbon emissions to 0. The solutions are in our hands. We just have to have the determination to make it happen. We have everything. We have everything that we need to reduce carbon emissions. Everything but political will. But in America, the will to act is a renewable resource. End of quote. I conclude with the words again from Al Gore, and I quote: human civilization has reached a fork in the road we have long traveled. One of 2 paths must be chosen. Both lead us into the unknown. But one path leads toward the destruction of the climate balance on which we depend, the depletion of irreplaceable resources that sustain us, the degradation of uniquely human values, and the possibility that civilization as we know it will come to an end. The other path leads us to the future. End of quote. I sincerely hope that we'll all work together in choosing a path of a sustainable future. I thank you for listening, and I wish you a wonderful and productive conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Jesse. I'm sure that we have heard some very inspiring things, starting from migrations to global warming. And I think that, well,
yes, thank you for having me right here. My name is Charan. I am from ICS University. And my question is, as long as we learn about the global change, can we just have one with the negative side? Why don't we just a little bit more about the positive side of global warming? Thank you. That's my question.
Sure. The question is what are the positive changes of global warming? Well, that's a very interesting question. There are some positive change. There are some positiveness in global warming, but there are not many. There are not many, unfortunately. One of the positives is that in some parts of the country, in some parts of the world, as the temperature warms, actually, especially in the agricultural fields, there's going to be more production, especially in the production of wheat, rice, and those kind of crops, that people are going to experience a rise in production. But that's as much as I can think of in terms of the positive change. There are more negatives, unfortunately, than the positives. Other questions?
Yeah, are there any more questions, please, coming from? Reflecting to your answers recently, you said there's a positive side of the global warming, and that's of course would bring about some fertilizations and productions into some certain areas. But if you compare it to the past, because we did your discussions with migrations. So, well, in the past, of course, human beings are very adaptable, so that they tend to migrate to the new fertilized lands or the new productive lands. But at this meantime, and you also mentioned that we have the cities, so we found the cities, and then it seems to me that it's less likely that human being is that adaptable. So what do you see the circumstances and also the consequences of this?
You are right, human beings are adaptable. But as we look at the growth of these cities, what I call mega cities, there are a lot of other new challenges that come with being congested in small spaces in urban areas. Let me give you an example. In May, I was in Beijing. They told me that in Beijing, on any particular day, they have on the road about 5 million cars in Beijing. And people are driving to work and are driving back home. I I saw a lot of people stressed just on the road because of the congestion of the road. So there are some new challenges that are coming as a result of these migrations into urban areas, some which we have not adequately studied or understood in terms of the psychological effects. There are also challenges related to housing. Many cities, especially in developing countries, are going to find a lot of challenges in trying to find a way of how to accommodate these many people in these spaces. There are challenges related to sanitary situations in those places. And so I think I was visiting a small city in Slovakia several years ago. And a lot of people have come from rural areas into this area. And I was amazed at the sanitary condition of this place and the conditions in which people were living. And so as people move, I think these are things that people don't understand when they are in rural areas. But there are challenges that many of our city planners and our city leaders are going to have to address as people migrate toward these places. And I think it's a challenge for those of you who are in urban development and urban planning. And now this is going to occur. As I said, in Africa, for example, I don't know how many of you have been to Kenya, but Kenya has one of the largest slums in the world called Kibera. When you go in this slum, you're really experiencing something that you have never seen on a human scale. And so these are challenges that we cannot avoid. And then what happens when you have these many people in small places that are not planned? When it rains, that's when you start experiencing the full effect of what this means for these human beings.
Thank you very much, sir. Is there any more questions on the floor, please? There's one.
There's a microphone behind you.
Thank you very much. Oh, I'm Steve Russ from Informatics at Burapha. Thank you for your inspiring lecture. You've just been speaking about the problem of cities. There are a number of projects around the world at the moment to do with so-called smart cities.
Right.
That is, people are seeing a possible direction to make cities and this urbanization sustainable through technology.
Right.
So in areas like communications, transport, health, education, it may be that technology can help.
Yes.
That was really just a comment. Then my question is whether you feel, because we haven't said a lot about technology, and possibly there may be positive directions that technology can help with some of the other problems you've mentioned. I mean, do you see any possible technological solutions to climate change, for example, or some of the other issues you've raised?
You know, as I said at the beginning, when I was preparing my remarks for this conference, I decided to focus on those four drivers. I purposely left out technology. Technology is one of the biggest drivers that we are experiencing today. And as you say, there are many cities around the world that are using smart cities and especially technology to try to address the rapid urbanization and the challenges that they face in urban cities. Indeed, technology can help us. And in fact, many are beginning to harness this technology in many different ways. And so, for example, if I ask a question here, how many of you in this room does not have a cell phone? Now, listen to the question. It's not how many of you have, but how many of you don't have a cell phone? Can you raise your hand? 0. 0. So what this says is that technology such as cell phones, for example, can be harnessed to address some of issues and the challenges that we face. For example, when we talk urban migration, how do we use, for example, cell phones to try to provide services to various constituencies that we serve? In many developing countries, we have started using cell phones. In fact, we have leapfrogged many developing countries in terms of communication. So we can use various technologies and use our cell phones to try to help us. But one of the things, for example, in Obama's policy that he issued last week, we are going to focus on data, for example. How do we use data to understand what is happening around the world? From what I understand, there is no a single hub where things that are happening around the world can be looked at from a single database. They are all in different places, and if one wants to understand what is happening around the world, has to pull from many different places in order to understand. So I completely agree with you that, in fact, technology can be one of, maybe not one, but can provide opportunity for us to be able to address some of the issues and the challenges that I mentioned this morning. And there are many different ways in which this could be done. And it is going to vary from one challenge to the other. That's how I respond to your question.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Jesse. So I think time's up. And well, let me thank you again for a very inspiring talk. Thank you. Professor will kindly remain on the stage, and we'd like to with you because we have to split this room into two parts, and then the
can be very useful for students who are learning math. And now I would like to Professor Filipino Page. There's a microphone there.
If you gave the students
you offer very impressive consistencies between the mentioned results and the simulated results. So I'd like to hear a little bit your model. So what kind of factors would this? And then could you please give us a little bit more about the details?
Thank you for the question. A factor for the
by finding 465 nanometer wavelength, and the second peak is strongest peak for all sound.
Because probably just only the time limit and also the way the presenting is not clear enough. That's why it's around question. Because you claim that
is its participation.
Struggle to incorporate themselves in the existing middle class structure as a leading consumer. It was a suppressed, unliberated desire of belonging to a more respectful way of life or a different class structure. Individuals in society.
So, then this is now the time. Okay, please. Could you please a little bit introduce yourself to the front?
My name is Pravit Tawadana. I came from Marine and Coastal Resort Institute from Prince of Songkla University. According to your business,
I will just say a few words. So, our distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to be here with you again this evening at the welcome and reception dinner held for participants and guests to the Burapha University International Conference 2013 in Pattaya. After having been working so hard all day, let's leave all the headache things at the conference room and come to enjoy food and drink and performances that we specially prepare for all of you. Welcome to you who come to Pattaya or even to Thailand for the first time, and welcome once again for those who have already been here before. So, please enjoy your dinner, enjoy your stay, and feel yourself at home. Thank you very much. So it's a short speech.
Once again, please. Well, all the performances that you have seen tonight, they are all the productions, and well, they are students of Burapha University. Now, well, I just talked to the ladies who play the violin, and then she's actually the last year. Well, she's one of our prizes, the last year of Faculty of Fine and Performing Arts. So now they are going to organize what is called the new founded faculty, say the Faculty of Music and Performing Arts. Well, we still have some other shows tonight for you all to enjoy, and then I will leave this stage right now to let you enjoy more on the performance from the Department of Music and Performing Arts. So hope you all have a very, very good time tonight. Enjoy the food and drinks. And then, well, we still have work to do tomorrow morning. Thank you very much.